My name is Emma Tarbath. I was a cross-country skier for Montana State University between the fall of 2016 and the spring of 2020. I placed 5th at NCAA championships, 10th at the U.S. National Championships, was named to the United States U23 World Championship team, and won the Ruts VK trail race. I joined a pro ski team after graduating from MSU. I dreamt of going to the Olympics, but my life began to crumble in front of my eyes. 6 years of grooming, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse were finally breaking every aspect of me. Despite this, I stayed in the relationship for another year. 7 years of abuse, no one reported anything. Every year we discussed how I had an eating disorder, but instead of medical care, he'd invite me over to his house where he'd try to make me eat foods I was scared of. Told me I was puffy when I gained weight. Refused to recruit a new girl to the team because her thighs were too big. Told me I'd be the sole reason a new freshman would get an eating disorder. And described to me how other teammates needed to lose weight. The medical professionals I did see were only for stomach issues I was having or for an explanation on my lack of period. Eventually, a team doctor started to suggest I was tired and get into territory that could have gotten me pulled from competing. When my coach heard this, he quickly switched me to another doctor with whom he spoke with alone beforehand, before allowing all three of us to meet together. During this appointment, the team doctor told me the exact same thing my coach had been telling me. I just needed to eat more and to go for the extra slice of cake. After this appointment, I got a DEXA scan that showed I had osteopenia in my spine. No one told me this, and I had to interpret the results using Google afterwards. After my scan results came back, my coach completely took over my medical care. No one told me this was happening or even asked if I was okay with it. I only found out after I admitted to my coach that I was scared every single time the team doctor came into the strength room because I thought I was getting pulled. He gained a lot of trust for me when he bumped me from 0 athletic scholarship to a full ride after my freshman year. He did this despite me almost losing 20% of my body weight that year, consistently finishing in the bottom half of the results sheets, even coming close to last once or twice, and being unable to raise my heart rate during intervals because I was eating so little. He'd often use me as the good example on the team. This went as far as sitting down the whole women's team, including me, at a teammate's house, to tell them how poorly they were doing, and to improve that they needed to act more like me. He did this despite knowing that the more favoritism he showed me, the more distant and disliked I became from the team. When I was alone with him, he'd tell me the exact opposite, that I needed to act more like them. He'd tell me how my parents didn't understand me and didn't know what was best for me. During the spring of 2020, the entire team tried to get him fired. At this time, he told me that I had to choose him or the team. I chose him. A couple months later, though, he told me that this never happened and I could be friends with anyone. The last day I was in Bozeman, he told me I was the reason for all of my failed relationships and that I'd have to move from Portland to Seattle to Kansas City because I'd screw up so much that I'd have to leave town. Possibly the hardest to talk about is the sexual abuse that occurred. He'd hug me despite me saying no. He said we had to because it was scientifically proven that hugging for 7 seconds would improve someone's mood. He'd pull on the butt of my spandex to demonstrate how I'd lost my butt, continually tell me to pull my spandex up and that they were sagging and that I needed to get new pants. In the spring of 2020, I went over to his house upset and unsure about eating more like he was telling me to. He took me into the guest bedroom despite no one else being home and us never talking in there before. It was one of the first times I'd let myself cry in front of him and show just truly how upset I really was. After talking, he told me, "Here, this will help," pushed me back onto the bed, and raped me. I've been dealing with the worst of the consequences of my coach's actions for about 2 years now. Last October, I fell into such a bad place that I lost my ability to cry, could barely even form a sentence, and began a suicide attempt 3 different times in a week. My life was saved from spending 5 days in the psychiatric ward, doing a 3-month intensive outpatient eating disorder program, bi-weekly, weekly therapy, and learning to manage the eating disorder, depression, and PTSD. Despite everything that happened, my coach's grooming made me unable to see the relationship for what it was. Plus, he was my coach. I thought our goals must be aligned since I believed we both wanted me to become the best skier I could be. I thought he was being honest every single time he made fun of me, yelled at me, told me I was screwing up. I thought I must have finally found someone who would tell me the truth about who I really was. The truth that everyone else was just unable to see or too nice to say aloud. I thought that all the time he spent one-on-one with me, the special interest that he took in me, that all of it must be a sign that I had promised as a skier. I thought all the best athletes had close relationships with their coaches. I thought that my ability to endure what my teammates pushed back against just meant that I was tougher, better, and more successful. It wasn't worth it. None of the success I had will ever make up for the flashbacks, the amount of effort it now takes to stay present, for the constant reasoning with the voice in my head telling me that everyone actually hates me, but is just too nice to tell me, for the dissociative sprinting that interrupted my runs, for seeing his face on random strangers, for the exhaustion that my once favorite foods now cause me because the eating disorder is screaming so loud in my head, for the fight to reclaim a body whose autonomy I was taught is meant to be one of the most sacred things in our lives. But he won't win. He won't get the last word. He will never take my voice. I will always know that I am stronger than him because I survived his inner hell that he unleashed onto me because he was too intimidated to face it. I am stronger than hate and fear. And as an athletic community, we must also be stronger than hate and fear. My experience is not new or unique, but inaction and a lack of education has allowed the cycle to repeat itself and take away the light from once bright eyes. Athletes need to be educated and aware of the red flags for abuse. Educating coaches and staff on abuse is helpful only if they're willing to speak up, but this often leaves athletes as their own last line of defense. I am for coaches. I am just against abuse and schools and governing bodies continuing to take half-ass action that is only reactive to reports of abuse and lawsuits. I was lucky enough to survive my own suicide attempts, but we can't be betting on someone else's life like that. Education is needed for athletes and their close supporters because the next athlete might not be so lucky. We cannot be scared into an action because of hate and fear. We are stronger than that.